the Australia Holy City 16. And there he is, Yahweh-Jesus, Brian Leonard, Golightly-Marshall, in a godlike production. Now, what he wants you to know is that on December the 11th, 2011, the Earth crossed the equatorial line of the Milky Way galaxy. The galaxy is 100,000 light years wide. The distance around it is the number for pi. 3.14159 times 100,000 is 314,159,000 light years. In the Greek concordance, 3141 means witness, as in record or testimony, usually of future events. The Mayan calendar, Yah says, I travelled to Mexico and the Yucatan to examine the calendar. Scholars had determined it is accurate to within 33 seconds in 500 million years, based on the moon orbit being out by 33 seconds. I spoke to the natives in the area. They told me the calendar was given them by 7-foot-tall white men with red to blonde curly hair, full beards, blue eyes, all dressed in white with a golden belt. The garments were short-sleeved, exposing their forearms, and were compared to Mayan giants, and so different from the Mayan, they could not have invented what they saw, as the Mayan people are 5 feet, black, straight hair, black eyes, dark skin, and no beards, as they have no facial hair. For those of you who have been following our videos, you will recall our demonstrations of how when water is drained from a kitchen sink, the water turns in one direction and then a short period, 10 minutes or so, reverses. Here in Australia, water always drained and turned counterclockwise. Above the equator in Europe, North Africa or North America, water has always drained clockwise. The reason for the change from one direction to the other is what is called the Coriolis effect. When a sphere rotates, the water draining will rotate down the sink, and depending being north or south of the equator, will spiral. On the equator, the water will not spiral. In fact, moving a few feet north or south, the effect will be seen. It is that sensitive. So if you were to build an apparatus for a ship at sea, the rate of speed of the rotation and draining of a measured amount of water would have given the ship position precisely from the equator. However, mariners did not think of it. They used the less accurate stars, such as the pole star. Today we use satellites, GPS, and it calculates within a meter of a precise position. However, the Milky Way galaxy also rotates, and therefore when we reached the Milky Way equator, the same effect began to dominate the Earth, and water reversed direction. Then, as the Dead Sea pedo self-chosen, who have been watching me for 75 years, realized the weather was being affected as clouds are affected by the Coriolis, and being ever opportunistic, they invented a carbon tax. Magnificent. So the Earth is 33,333 light years out from the center of the galaxy. It would rotate around the galaxy in 250 million years. That is to say, if it were to continue. However, the universe is only 36,000 years old. So it's a time snap of time. The base of the altar to the Lord is 25 years wide. That is 9131.06 pyramid inches, calculating 1 inch per day. So dividing the 9131.06 by the days in a year, 365.2424 equals 25 years. When we reach this date, Julian Day 245-8888, February the 8th, 2020, we will be back out of hell to where creation occurred, when only the earth was created. Reading from Job 26:7. From our perspective, the holy city will be seen descending like a ghost of Eden to engulf the earth. Judgment will occur and all abominations will be cast off the earth. By February the 8th, 2020, the earth will have travelled 3,068,000,000 miles since the crossing December 11th, 2011. And 3068 is God, or Yahweh. Reading Job 26:7, he stretches out the north over the empty place and hangeth the earth upon nothing. It has a simple gematria of 832. However, times 6, which is English gematria, is 4992 from 4990. And you may recall the pyramid on Tahiti measures 4,990 miles to the South Pole, and it has a base measuring 87 feet by 267 feet for a total area of 23,229 square feet. And as days was the age of my grandfather, Francis Golightly. 23,229 days is 63.6 years, and takes us over to the verses from Isaiah 63 verses 1 through 6. And the 4990 is Christ, God, salvation. As I have said previously, the earth was created in an empty place, and then the sun and stars were created. The center of the visible universe is the earth. Look in any direction, one will observe 7 rings of stars and galaxies, each 250 million light years apart, and each a different color red, known wrongly as the Doppler red shift. In this theory, light from distant stars appears red shifted as light is traveling faster with the further out these individual rings are. But if this was so, they would not be the same distance apart. What we are concerned with, however, is that the earth fell southward once the galaxy was created, the sun orbiting the axis of the creation, an immovable line, and so the earth sits on that axis. The sun orbits the same axis, not the earth. Like the earth just happens to sit directly on that axis line. So if the earth were not there, the sun would still orbit around that axis. The earth dropped south, came to a stop, then fell back northward. As it fell, gaining speed until the speed of 69,000 kilometers per hour was reached. On December the 11th, 2011, it crossed the equator of the galaxy. So the Mayan calendar is correct, as it was handed to the Mayan by angels. However, modern man using the Gregorian calendar miscalculated. It is out by 375 days. Missing is year 0, the time between 1 BC and 1 AD, and Pope Gregory XIII added 10 days to October the 4th, 1582, making the next day October the 15th. The predicted date of the solar system crossing the galaxy equator was December the 21st, 2012. It was wrong. So we were to roll back 375 days and prove it by the water draining reversal. And then later in 2018, on December the 8th, an angel, the angel of the kitchen, reminded me, watch the water, to again test the water direction, and found the draining was reversing every 10 minutes or so. This has reset the weather, shifting very cold weather to Sydney and further south to Melbourne. And where we are in Tugum, it's perfect weather, summer and winter. I think this will remain the new weather pattern for a very long time, says Yah. Again, Julian day number 2458888 is February the 8th, 2020. And I calculated that from December the 11th, 2011, the Earth has continued northward at 69,000 kilometers per hour and traversed a distance of 3,068,000,000 miles. 3068 is Yahweh, mistranslated to Jehovah, as this is the Jewish name of their God. Then from the 96th anniversary of Lunation 0, the base of the altar to the Lord, the Great Pyramid, that was set December the 18th, 1922. So December the 18th, 2018 until February the 8th, 2020, Julian day 2458888 is 1.142 years, and in the Greek concordance is devil or devils. 8.16 years from December the 11th, 2011 until February the 8th, 2020, in the Hebrew concordance is to be guilty, perish, destroy. Reading Isaiah 24:6, therefore hath the curse devoured the earth, and they that dwell therein are desolate. Therefore the inhabitants of the earth are burned, and few men left. The distance travelled in nautical miles is 2,666,000,000, found in 1 Peter 5:8, Revelation 12:16. And then the distance in miles, 3,068,000,000, divided by the Earth's diameter equals 3870, found in Matthew 26:53, which is the verse about the 12 legions of angels. The Earth diameter divided by 2 is 3963, and 3963 is Patmos and the Revelation. Reading Matthew 26:53, thinkest thou that I cannot now pray to my Father, and he shall presently give me more than 12 legions of angels? That's the 3870, meaning to pray. In nautical miles, 2666, found in 1 Peter 5:8, be sober, be vigilant, because your adversary, the devil, as a roaring lion, walketh about, seeking whom he may devour. The word devour is 2666. Then Revelation 12:16, and the earth helped the woman, and the earth opened her mouth and swallowed, it's 2666, up the flood which the dragon cast out of his mouth. And the dragon, of course, are all the churches, Islam, Judaism, and the earth opened her mouth. That is the book that opens up, that only Yah can read, to swallow up the flood of the words, the billions of words that has been cast out of the mouth of the dragon.
1703 is from the number for word, 1697.
Which number is that, though?
1703.
Oh, 1703.
It's from the number for word.
Right, yes. Yeah, I was just saying the 1.161703, 1703 is from 1697, which is word. So amazing. Now reading Isaiah 1:2, 1:4 and then 1:9. Hear, O heavens, and give ear, O earth, for the Lord hath spoken. I have nourished and brought up children, and they have rebelled against me. Ah, sinful nation, a people laden with iniquity, a seed of evil doers, children that are corrupters. They have forsaken the Lord, they have provoked the Holy One of Israel unto anger. They are gone away backward. And then Isaiah 1:9, except the Lord of hosts had left unto us a very small remnant, we should have been as Sodom, and we should have been like unto Gomorrah. The earth was created in an empty place and hung upon nothing. Its geocentric position in space had to be changed to be a small planet orbiting the sun. That way, the universities being dominated by the same evil worldwide in all things has to cover up the beauty of creation. Now, changing topic, there is a great deal of anti-Semitic graffiti happening throughout Australia, according to an article we're going to take a look at. And a Labor politician is objecting to the nation's treasurer, Josh Frydenberg, one of the Talmudic chosen pedo people. Scott Morrison, the Prime Minister, is outraged by the anti-Semitic uprising in Australia. Yah says he is a very devout, speaking in tongues Pentecostal lunatic, which is a form of insanity and certainly would not recognise Christ today, as the Bible bashers have been devoured by the same demonic influence that has so many ridiculous rules of how Christ returns. Not even their god Lucifer could fulfill their delusions. So, quoting from the article, Morrison went on to attack the absolutely sickening and disgraceful scourge of anti-Semitic graffiti, which is unrelated to Polton's attempt to have Frydenberg removed from Parliament, that has been seen across Australia in recent months. Quoting again, anti-Semitism has no place in this country. I mean, I saw also what was happening with the graffiti against our colleague Julianne Lisa up in Sydney. And here is the article. I will leave the link in the description box. You can read it in its fullness. Trevor Polton, though, in the Labor Party, sounds like a good bloke. The author of the, what shall we call it? The hallowed cost denier. Anyway, Yah says this is why I have more faith.
The 6 million survivors of
the 6 million survivors, yes. This is why I have more faith in atheists, as a smart mind cannot deal with the insanity of the churches, and as such the biblical Jesus becomes a myth in their mind. Yah says it was Josh Frydenberg who called me in 2002 and asked if I was the man saying I was Christ. He said he was calling on behalf of a senator in the Australian Parliament in Canberra. I answer, yes. He said, unless you stop what you are doing, those above us will kill you. I said, many have tried and I am still here. Yes, when you think about it, no other but the Red Sea pedo would have cause to be concerned about Christ being back in the nation that it happens to occupy. So let's go on, because this leads to the murder of Michael. Yah says, what was I doing? Setting up a miracle water outlet, completely cleansed water treated with colloidal silver, ozone and magnesium. The water for Australia is laced with poisons and fluoride, etc. In addition, Melbourne and Sydney water must pass through pumping stations. In Melbourne there are 11 pumping stations, the system laid out to distribute water from 3 reservoirs. The best water services the area where the wealthy live in Yarra. I telephoned the head scientist at Melbourne City Water in 2000. I requested the chemical analysis for all of the 11 treatment plants. After half an hour on the phone, transferred to various departments, placed on hold, finally George said he was the head chemist and asked what I was after. I told him and he put me on hold. He came back. What do you want the chemical reports for? I replied, I wanted to design a reverse osmosis filter to remove the nasties in the water. He said, there are no nasties in our water. Our head scientist, a professor at the university, blah, 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 blah. I replied, I disagree and want the reports. Again, he put me on hold, but this time I could hear the conversation. What are we going to do to give him? We can't pull a rabbit out of a hat. A woman said, it's not that guy from Canada, is it? George came back online. Yes, can you give me your name and address? I did, and on hold again he said, it's him. In other words, way back then, all of Australia was aware of me and that I was closing in. These bastards are everywhere. Water collects in reservoirs from the clouds and as a result are positive charged. Water is pumped to treatment plants. It passes through gigantic iron pipes. The water is then neutralized as the positive charge dissipates into the pipes and ground. The pipes, however, underwent a major relining with plastic liners, huge plastic tubes drawn into the iron pipes. Then positive water pumped into fluoride treatment plants. This meant the water retained a positive charge. The fluoride and nasties also become positive, and you drink it and your negative cells draw the positive charge chemicals into your brain and all cells. I received the chemical analysis 2 weeks later. The areas where the old people live, like Richmond, had 5 chemicals that cause cancer. In the Toorak system, though, none. And in addition, they had selenium, copper, nickel, silver, and so on, all good for you. The charged water reacted in copper pipes, as all new high-rise buildings were producing green from reacting with the copper pipes. A contractor told me what was happening, then asked me if I could figure out what was going on. This man was responsible for the buildings and he was being blamed for the staining of everything, the water coming out of the pipe, staining everything green. Here's a shot of the cancer and arthritic causing on the left there. You can see how you've got dibromochloromethane, reading down then bromoform, chloroform, total trihalomethanes. Well, there's none of those 5 in the Toorak system. However, over in Footscray, where the poorer people live, you've got an average of 7, 17, 5, 26, 52. And yes, each one of those 5 cause, at the least, arthritis leading to cancer.
Rotting vegetation that's allowed to collect
in the reservoirs. Right, and they don't do anything about cleaning it out.
And that then turns into those 5 chemicals
right,
reacting with the chemicals that are added in the treatment plants, and they become cancerous.
Right.
So old people get cancer and die.
Yes.
Feeds the system.
Right. Here they are. The chemicals are deadly for the aged population, but great for the drug industry.
What these are also found in the reservoirs. You have to say, how do they get there? So you've got all this aluminium, Alzheimer's, arsenic, which is deadly, cadmium, which is also deadly, cyanide, fluoride, lead, mercury, and then the 5 chemicals there which are caused to become cancerous when they're mixed with the other chemicals. That's the report. Footscray, Richmond, all that area is the older part of Melbourne where the old age people live.
So Yah says, how do they make sure the cancer-causing chemicals are in the water? Well, this is, chemtrailing has been going on now for a very long time. Yah says, I spent days and observed the hundreds of jets dropping chemtrails over the catchment areas that cause the water to carry the chemicals into the old areas where aged people were the target. I opened a miracle water shop on Hoddle Street, the main road into Melbourne from the east, and serviced the area. I had been warned. This is the phone call from Josh Frydenberg. I had been warned, and my business partner and nephew, Michael Marshall, was shot dead outside of his home. And there's old DJT on board the chemtrail plane, still pouring out their poisons into the air. The bullshit that has been given for the reason of this, oh, we can't stop now. Yeah, right. My nephew, says Yah, like most of you, was a stupid know-all fool. He was shot twice in the back and 4 times in the back of the head. The impact blew his eyes out. The time was 6:36 p.m. on the 25th of October 2003. The star overhead was YBS 6363 from Job 15:21, quoting, "A dreadful sound, 6963, is in his ears. In prosperity the destroyer shall come upon him." The 15:21 from the verse number is the pyramid passage lead into the river of paradise. Now this is Michael down here on the left. Who that is in the middle, not sure. Somebody related to the murder of Michael, Yah thinks, and then the guy with the tattoo across his forehead, is that the...
That's the guy who did it.
That's the guy who did it. And on the right is the wall. This is Michael's home. It was outside of his home that he was shot dead, that date and time. That's Carl Williams, is it?
That's Carl Williams. He organised it.
Right.
Got paid. He paid the assassin $10,000, but there was $300,000 involved.
Right.
Like, you can have half of Melbourne killed for that kind of money.
Yeah.
But they wanted to get me so bad.
Now,
but they got him instead.
Right. My nephew, however, was a very kind man, loved children, was aware of the satanic power over Australian law, medical, politicians, etc. The murderers were parked in a white Toyota down the street from his home for a month. The police told me, this is after the event, they had the van bugged and thought the thugs were going to rob the BMW dealer nearby. I told them, says Yah, that a BMW dealer deals with bank transfers and leases. They never deal in cash, and that there was more money in the school lunch tuck shop. Ironically, the police were involved, and this is the standard criminal authority in Australia. The man who had organised the assassination, Carl Williams, his parents lived behind Michael's sister, Michelle. No doubt he would visit his parents and watch over the back fence. He was also caught and killed in prison to keep his mouth shut. Continuing recording after a phone call from the Apostle Peter. We may have a couple of Jehovah's Witnesses coming around. They keep going back to Peter's house, and he kept saying, "Why don't you go and see my mate Jesus out in Chugam? He's way ahead of you." And this time they actually listened. Anyway, Yah says my nephew was shot dead outside his home. The home was owned by his wife. Her father had sold it to her for $110,000 when she married Michael, and the home was in her name. The assassins were parked down the street watching for a chance to earn the $10,000. Michael's 5-year-old son was in his truck when the shooting occurred. The assassins ran off on foot as 20 police cars immediately surrounded the street. Apparently, they had been overheard as the murder was going down by police and followed the two men to the pub.
I'd like to comment at this point. The van had been bugged by the police. They were down the street watching Michael, waiting for an opportunity to kill him. And the police are saying, and I pulled them up on this, I said, did you mean to say that these two men who were going to kill Michael sat in the van without discussing it, what they was going to do? Right?
Yeah.
And why is it that within 20 minutes there was 20 police cars because he was waiting for the assassination to occur? That's the depth of evil that's in Australian law enforcement.
Now, this is the shop on Hoddle Street near the trees. Yeah, it's got the white arrow there. You can see the enormous amount of traffic that passed our door all day long. However, there was another bashing and beating of a Brian that occurred earlier.
Yes, now if look at the sunlight shining straight down above that tree, it means it's midday. So midday through the week, you can see there's 4 lanes of traffic and a bus, that's 5 lanes of traffic pulled up with the lights, right? So what that basically means is that being Hoddle Street, the main drag from the western suburbs leading into Melbourne, it's cars flowing there 24 hours a day, right? So what had happened was that the location where we had the colloidal silver set up attracted a lot of attention, and they had to stop this. That's the whole point. What else was I going to say?
Well, you were talking about the bashing of Brian at the move.
See, so where that arrow was pointing next door to that, there was this homosexual guy that he was going to rent that shop out next door to this one. So when we saw the sign, it was for rent, we knocked on the door. He came to the door and we went inside, and there's all this strange things like whipping posts and cattle prods and blow-up dolls,
paraphernalia,
male blow-up dolls and so forth. And he was showing us all the way through it. And I said to Michael, we're not taking this den of iniquity. So as we walked out, he was moving from there to 68 Hoddle Street, which is called Eagle Leather. And that's the biggest homosexual adult store for all this paraphernalia. And I went in and had a look, actually. The things you can buy in there is it's amazing what these ideas they come up with. So I don't recommend it. However, he put a note when we rented the shop.
So you rented the shop next door
to
his original. When you said we're not
Michael to find out who owned it, and he did, and then we went and approached the people.
Because
it was the Chinese lady.
Originally, it was the appointment. It was the appointment at Brian's shop that was becoming available, obviously, because he was moving.
That's right.
So they expected you there.
He left a note on the window of his shop. Moved to 68 Hoddle Street, Eagle Leather, and had his name, Brian. So when the assassins showed up after me, they parked in the bus zone, got out, 2 men, walked up and looked in my window, then went next door and looked at it, because it was only 20 feet, and saw the name Brian. Well, they're after Brian to kill him, right? That's me. So they then get back into their vehicle and they drive down to 68 Hoddle Street, which is only 3 or 4 blocks away. They go in, they kill one man with an iron bar and bash the other, and Brian is hiding upstairs.
Right.
So then the police show up at the same spot, pull up in the bus stop,
so
get out.
They pull up outside your store, not where the murder went down.
That's right. And then one of them sort of wanders off to the left, looking around. He sees a note. Brian moved to 68 Hoddle Street. They then jump back in their car. Then they go down, and then they are investigating the murder that had gone down.
Right. So they went to where they expected the murder to go down, rather than where it actually go down.
So the fact is that the man that was allegedly hired to kill was his parents were living behind my niece's, who was the sister of Michael, at their house. Now, you've got 4 million people in Melbourne. What is the odds that Carl Williams, the guy who was given $300,000 for the hit, right, allegedly, and then he hires the assassin, so does he peer over the fence looking for me? Now, my brother lived where he would have been looking over the fence. He's a big guy like me, right? So how it all come together, we'll never know, because Carl Williams, he was murdered in jail to keep his mouth shut.
Yes.
So as it turns out, Michael is killed because he's also a big fella, and I had been driving his truck because my truck had broken down. But in the meantime, we'd gone our separate ways. Hit the building across from his home in Joy Street in St Kilda. When I went over there to give my condolences to his wife, these coppers run out from the building next door, across the road, and look at me, and I sort of look back at them, and then they go back inside the building again. So they're still observing where Michael had been shot. Right. So, point is, never got me.
Right, and this is all Australian government involvement.
So we see on the right there, there it is, King of Judah, Brian Leonard Golightly-Marshall, HIV/AIDS cure. That was our registered name for the shop itself, Miracle Water. Yes. Right, and that was part of the things that we drew up.
And this is, so on the right there is what we drew up for Papua New Guinea.
That's right.
Right. Anyway, this is the last slide in 16, so we'll move right along to, for fun, we thought we'd go into Google Earth, and find eagle leather, and here it is at 80 Hoddle Street.
The shop looks different. Whether it has been moved, I'm not sure, but it doesn't really matter. That's what it is, it's eagle leather. But my nephew and I walked in there to see the owner of the other shop, which was next to where we were going to rent. We had
So the owner of this shop now was right beside the place that you ended up renting.
Right.
It was still called Eagle Leather.
That's right.
And his name was Brian, and he moved to this location, and this is where the murder went down.
He lived in the other shop. He didn't have Eagle Leather written on it.
Right.
It's just there was a sign in the shop, moved to Eagle Leather, Brian.
Right.
Yeah. And I thought it said 68, but it might have been 80.
Yes. Right. Okay. And so this is where the murder went down.
It didn't look like this. That shop has all been redone up. It's much better done with all of the artwork and so forth. Right. But Mick and I walked in there, realising once we get in, I thought it was a leather shop where they sold leather coats and that. Yeah. When we get in there, it's all homosexual paraphernalia. Right. It was like Kmart. Right. It was huge.
And the point is that this is where the murder went down on that day that you watched the assassins come in. They left to go to this location, yet the police turned up at the other location.
That's because the police had set it all up. Yeah. And they was coming in to kill Brian. Yeah. Right? So when the assassins pulled up in the bus stop, the two guys got out and they looked in my shop because they had the number right, and then only a few feet away was a note on the window. Yeah. And it looked like it could have been part of the same shop. Yeah. And it said, move to Eagle Leather, number, whatever. I thought it was 68, but apparently it was 80. Brian. Yes. So they're there to kill Brian. Yeah. So they then move in, go down to Eagle Leather, go in, kill the guy there, bash another guy with an iron bar. Brian is hiding away somewhere, apparently upstairs. And then, shortly after that, the police show up, pull up in the exact same spot in the bus shop, walk up to my shop, and then see the sign in the shop next door. Yeah, about Brian, and then go down there. And that's where they go down to see the body of Brian. The crime. As it turns out, of course, it's a wrong guy. Yeah. Just had the same name. Right. Okay. So that's the corruption in Australia. I've talked to my older relatives years ago, and they all talked about the corruption and
oh yeah, well that's the series Underbelly throughout Melbourne, and
well that's right.
I mean it's non-stop, but anyway, don't want to focus on it.
So it's anything from the medical to the chemtrails to the bushfires. It's all controlled and done in Australia first, and see how it flies, and then they spread it over to America, like the FPOS system for banking, the ATMs in the
world. Yes, I remember. I worked supplying with our company. We made computer room furniture, and I was called in to measure up for computer room furniture in the Swift head office in Sydney, and I was told then that Australia and New Zealand were used as the the testing, and it was like waving a red flag at a bull. If we went for it, then the rest of the world would follow. But they used Australia and New Zealand first because they regarded the people of the nations as apathetic.
Right.
And that's exactly right. I remember coming back from living for 14 years in North America and in Australia, and Australia's always been much further ahead technology regarding banking, etc. In Australia now, you don't write a check, and you haven't done for years, but you still do in Australia, in the USA and Canada. But it's all to do with
now. Once you've viewed this, you'll see what the view count is on this, and how many uploads we've done, and how many followers we have. But we have this other program that we have already spoke about.
The flat tube.
The flat tube, which exposes the corruption that the false numbers are given out for people who make money on view count. So therefore the view count can be controlled downwards, and the money put in the pockets of the people who are controlling it.
Well, not having to pay it out, that's the point.
Well, they don't have to pay out. Yeah. So this is the whole point. So we are now up to over 332 million
channel views.
Channel views.
And we've been watching it. It does increase exponentially throughout the weekend, and then drops back down as you would expect it to do per hourly rate throughout the week, and then once the world comes into the
hourly rate throughout the
Australia,
week runs around 6,000 to 7,000, and on the weekends it goes up to 10,000, 11,000, 12,000, 16,000 per hour.
Yes. Yeah, it's been diligent. And Sandra says that hers is no longer working. They're onto us.
Yeah, well, this is the point. We don't have to do it anymore, really.
No.
But just to show you that there are millions and millions and millions of people are watching us, and not necessarily are they making comments, or are they...
Well, if you don't make your details public, then we would never know that they're subscribed, and you don't have to be a YouTuber to watch on the YouTube, and if you're not a YouTuber, then you can't comment. So anyway, all good for the good. And just a reminder, going back full circle, that Michael's murder was the year following the threat from Josh Frydenberg. Unless you stop what you are doing, those above us will kill you. Now, it was June the 7th, 2019 that we met with and gave for hand delivery to Scott Morrison. We met with Keith Pitt. Now, yes, everything is dependent if he kept his word to us. And Keith is a re-elected member of the Liberal National Party, which Scott Morrison leads as Prime Minister. Now, it was a large document. We'd also been in Canberra and given the runaround by Australia Post in the Parliament House. Stephen there told us that it would be delivered in 2 hours, but it got diverted for 2 weeks via Sydney. And yes, as Scott Morrison belongs to a very large church in Sydney. It measures 7777.7 nautical miles to the Great Pyramid, the altar to the Lord. The church has 2,000 members. And we began our Scott Morrison uploads, and somebody in the church maybe has already seen it, whatever. And we also sent information directly to the church administrators to alert Scott Morrison. Now, the Red Sea pedos have been in charge of Australia for a very long time, since at least 1919. As Yah says, told to me by my stepfather, who worked for the Prime Minister Billy Hughes. And the company he worked for later was owned by the brother of another Prime Minister, and that was Billy McMahon, a homosexual who was forced to marry, a very attractive model. Sonia was her name. Now, from the army down, everything in Australia is corrupt and controlled by the same forces that blackmail and also practice Satanism, with several prominent politicians and sportsmen identified throughout 2015 by Fiona Barrett. And here is a quote from Channel 9 News, October 23rd, 2015. George Gardner says a woman who says she was the victim of an alleged pedophile ring operating in the 1970s has made explosive claims in Sydney today. Fiona Barnett spoke at a press conference along with members of abuse survivor group SNAP. Quoting Fiona, "Well, I was prostituted to pedophile parties at Parliament House, Canberra. The people involved in this elite pedophile ring included high-ranking politicians, police and judiciary." Need we say any more? Australia, under the control of the Dead Sea pedos, has become like the USA, the UK, Canada and New Zealand, which is actually called a pedophile ring fronting as a nation. It's the habitat of devils and foul personages running the show for everybody, soon to come to their end and cast off the earth as heaven descends, renewing the creation, and only those of innocence and righteousness and willing to learn of the teachings of Jesus via myself will escape damnation. And yes, as we've discussed briefly, Australia has always been a testbed for the banking system, on up to the testing of atomic weapons at Woomera. They've been controlling weather from Pine Gap for decades and causing fires, using directed energy weapons. And I pointed out how they worked and did not touch the green trees between houses that disintegrated by 1000 degrees Celsius when all of the nails in the frames were caused to glow red hot, and then later used in America. Remember the Paradise Fire of California from November the 8th, 2018, and Pamela there, who follows us in her escape with her daughter, leading others out. Pamela's living on the property now in temporary dwelling while her house going through all the legal ease of permits, etc., to rebuild. Now, Australians are dumbed down, and the world order tests their diabolical schemes in Australia first to see if the people are stupid enough not to notice. They are presently giving away shipping ports like Darwin to the Chinese, closing down all coal-fire electrical generation, where we have the largest coal supplies on Earth, yet is sold to China so they can burn it. We also have the largest oil find at Cooper Pedy that is greater than all of the known oil on Earth and is closed down under the instructions of the USA. We have the largest iron ore deposit, silver, aluminium, second highest gold and diamonds. And it is my plan, says Yah, to introduce the same monetary system that Hitler created and is already being given to Pope Benedict XVI in the 49 points of Vatican III. And Hitler did not use a gold-backed system. There is no need. You can own all the gold in the world, but if you cannot pay people, if people will not labor for you, in other words, give their time or labor to shift the gold or do whatever, then you have nothing. It's based upon the labor and time of mankind. That's what Yah's system will be based on. So it can all stay in the ground. You just take out what's needed to be used for generation of power, etc., and goods and services. Outside of that, nobody's going to be storing it, so it'll be worthless. And this is why the contract that inevitably killed my nephew was worth $300,000. The guy's name who put it out was Morrison, arrested in Spain and later acquitted. So Yah says, do we have an indication of corruption here? You think? However, Revelation 21:10, quoting, "And he carried me away in the spirit to a great and high mountain, and showed me that great city, the holy Jerusalem, descending out of heaven from God." The verse has a value in simple geometry of 1299, and in the Hebrew concordance 1299 means to lighten, lightning, cast forth from 1300, lightning, a gleam, concretely a flashing sword, bright, glittering sword, lightning. And the Greek concordance from 1299 from 1296, arrangement, institution, instrumentality, an arrangement, commandment, to arrange thoroughly, institute, prescribe, etc., appoint, command, give, set in order, ordain, and to appoint besides, that is supplement, as a codicil, add to. In other words, everything in its appointed time.
So, coincidentally not, the Dead Sea is 1,300 feet below sea level.
Ah.
It's the deepest point on Earth.
Right.
It's the saltiest point on Earth. Would be impossible to drown in it. You float up to your waist in it, standing upright. So all these measurements of the Earth, including now the Dead Sea, gives you an indication of the last verse that's important, that tells us that the position where creation took place of the Earth is returning out of hell, past the equatorial line of the Milky Way galaxy, which is mother's milk, up to a point above that is where creation occurred. So as we are going up, heaven appears to be coming down, but we are going up to it. So from our perspective, it's coming down.
Yes.
So we're meeting at a point in time where the conception of the Earth took place and was where it was born. Then man, given the opportunity to live in paradise, destroys it, and evil takes over.
Yes.
That is what the parables of Genesis and the murder of Abel by Cain, and then the reintroduction of the Holy Ghost to bring forth a child out of Eve, the innocent, via Seth, and that goes down. And you'll find, however, you might think of it as a parable, but when you look at all the blue-eyed people that are in Europe, they are all of that same line of Seth, genetically. So it doesn't matter where you go back in time and it starts to fade into what appears to be a myth. It doesn't matter. The reality is you're dealing with black and white and blue eyes that you're looking at. So you've got it written down in a book which corrupt. Why would they corrupt it if it wasn't something behind the corruption? They corrupted it because they don't want you to know. So there is this evil force. And then when you look at Australia, America, New Zealand, Canada, etc., even South Africa today, the white people are set upon by the insanity of the rulers of the nations, which are all communist.
The same Red Sea pedestrians. When we say Dead Sea, it's Yah's, it's the Red Sea pedestrians. However, Yah refers them to as the Dead Sea because that's what they are. They're actually soul. They are not made in his image at all. And so let's move on to the next slide where you can give the numbers, the current numbers.
Now the current numbers I've just checked, it's at 10,639 per hour. There are 939,664 subscribed, and the total is 332,917,752,000.
Channel views.
Channel views.
And that's on the channel's playlist on the
Christ is
Flat
back. This is his channel.
Yeah, channel's playlist.
Now they'll possibly now, because we have this program that'll give us the numbers, they'll probably block the numbers.
Well,
so it doesn't really matter. You know, there's, for every person in America, for example, 332 million of you, right? That's how many views you've had of that particular program, which is Christ is back. This is his channel.
Flat 2. All right, moving right along.